I want to say thank you for having me here to be a part of this glorious day and celebration of Felix's birthday. It's truly an honor. I will be reading 4 poems which have the theme of music. I'm hoping that Felix will hear something that he likes. I'm sure he will. The first poem is by Charles Bukowski, of all people. As many of you may or may not know, he was a big fan of classical music. He disdained the television, but one of his favorite pastimes was sitting at his kitchen table, turning on the radio, and listening to the local station that played classical music. This poem is called Hungaria, Symphonia, poem number 9 by Franz, Liszt. Yes, I know that I write many poems, but it's not because of ambition. It's more or less just something to do while I live out my life. And if I have to write 100 bad poems to get one good one, I don't feel that I'm wasting my time. Besides, I like the rattle of the typewriter. It sounds so professional, even when nothing is really happening. Writing is all I know how to do, and I much prefer the music of great classical composers. So I always listen to them while I'm typing. And when I finally write a good poem, I'm sure they have much to do with it. I am listening to a composer now who is taking me completely out of this world, and suddenly I don't give a damn if I live or die or pay the gas bill on time. I just want to listen. I feel like hugging the radio to my chest so that I can be a part of the music. I mean, this actually occurs to me, and I wish I could capture what I am hearing and write it into this poem now, but I can't. All I can do is sit and listen and type small words as he makes this grand, immortal statement. Now, the music is finished, and I stare at my hands, and the typewriter is silent. And suddenly, I feel both much better and far worse. For the next poem, it's one I selected from the anthology Good Poems, put together by Garrison Keillor, featuring work that he's read on Writer's Almanac. I've had the honor of having my work featured on Writer's Almanac, and it's a great thing. This poem is called Instrument of Choice by Robert Phillips. She was a girl no one ever chose for teams or clubs, dances, or dates. So she chose the instrument no one else wanted, the tuba. Big as herself, heavy as her heart, its golden tubes and coils encircled her like a lover's embrace. Its body pressed on hers. Into its mouthpiece, she blew life. Its deep-throated oompas, oompas, sounding almost like mating cries. I'm going to read 2 more poems from my newest collection of poetry to get published this year from Guernica Revisited. It came out and was featured on Writer's Almanac on April 1st. So if you check out their archives, you can read one of the poems that Garrison Keillor featured. I did bring copies for sale. I also have copies of the Mas Tequila Review, a biannual poetry magazine I put out featuring poets from all across the country. We did give out the first annual Margaret Randall Poetry Prize, which she selected the winner for the current issue. Lauren Camp, a poet out of Santa Fe, was awarded the Poetry Prize. So thank you for that, Margaret. So this poem is called Milagro 17. One of my favorite jazz recordings is called Swiss Movement. It's a live recording of the Les McCann Trio and Eddie Harris playing at the Montreux Jazz Festival, I believe sometime in the early 70s. And there's a bonus track on the CD by their bassist, Leroy Vinegar, titled Caftan, and it brought this poem about. Sunday morning, coffee and writing poetry, listening to Swiss movement on my stereo, and during Leroy Vinegar's Caftan, Eddie Harris's sax starts to honk, all noisy and funky, a real prayer I can dig. When I hear the birds outside getting excited, actually answering sax tweets with their own loud, free-form response. And for a brief moment, I'm engulfed in a mix of notes, everywhere and nowhere, man-made and natural. Heaven must be one big jazz club, and all God's angels play. And the last poem, one of my favorite vocalists, again in jazz and blues, is Joe Williams. You may remember him as the father-in-law from The Cosby Show. Fantastic voice. This is called Funeral Song. Finally, bring it on home, with Joe Williams singing Every Day I Have the Blues. Not the big band version he sang while fronting for Count Basie during the 1950s, but the mellow number he did decades later while backed by a jazz combo in a small club in LA. If your feet ain't moving when Joe belts out about how I've had my share of bad luck and trouble, then maybe you should be in the box instead of me, because I did have the blues most days, but learned to deal with it and get myself out of bed one day at a time. Gave it my best shot again and again, living and loving and crying and laughing and fornicating and fighting and learning and trying and writing and working and finally dying. Now my time is up. Just let me step aside, vacate this space, so someone else can take my place.